Formula One has always presented itself as a meritocracy of speed, the fastest drivers in the fastest cars competing at the highest level. But behind that image lies a harder truth. Talent alone has never been enough. For decades, the final step to the grid has been guarded not by lap times, but by money. In 2003, one driver confronted that reality head-on and chose a path no one had ever taken before. His name was Justin Wilson, and instead of finding a billionaire backer or a manufacturer contract, he did something unprecedented. He sold shares in himself. This is the story of the only Formula One driver who treated his career like a startup, turned his future into a financial instrument, and launched the world's first human IPO. A champion without a checkbook. By the early 2000s, Justin Wilson had done everything the traditional motorsport ladder demanded. He was intelligent, technically gifted, and relentlessly consistent. In 2001, he won the Formula 3000 International Championship, widely considered the final proving ground before Formula One. Historically, F3000 champions were fast-tracked to the top. On paper, Wilson's resume was flawless, but Formula One had changed. By 2003, even the smallest teams required massive financial backing. A seat at a backmarker outfit like Minardi no longer went to the most deserving driver. It went to the driver who could bring roughly €1.5 million in sponsorship. That figure wasn't about performance development or future planning. It was survival money. Cash required just to keep the team operating. Wilson didn't come from wealth. He didn't have a multinational corporation ready to place logos on his car. He had results, intelligence, and reputation. But none of those could be deposited into a team's bank account. Like many champions before him, he found himself locked out of Formula One despite doing everything right on track. For most drivers, this is where the dream ends quietly. The manager who refused to accept no. Wilson's career might have stalled permanently, if not for one man willing to think differently. His manager was Jonathan Palmer, a former F1 driver himself, but also a doctor, entrepreneur, and sharp financial mind. Palmer understood two realities simultaneously. First, Justin Wilson was good enough for Formula One. Second, the sport no longer rewarded merit unless it was accompanied by money. Instead of chasing sponsors that didn't exist, Palmer asked a radical question: what if the public became the sponsor? The idea he developed was almost absurd in its ambition. Palmer proposed creating a public company, Justin Wilson plc. This company would raise capital by selling shares to investors. In return, those investors would receive a percentage of Wilson's future earnings, not just from Formula One, but from his entire professional racing career. It was not a sponsorship, it was ownership. In effect, Justin Wilson would become a publicly traded asset. His talent, his career, his future income, all monetized up front to fund his entry into Formula One. No athlete had ever attempted anything like it. Turning a racing career into a prospectus. The plan was as brilliant as it was terrifying. Investors weren't promised fame or memorabilia. They were offered financial exposure to a human career, complete with all the risk that entailed. Injury, poor performance, or early retirement could wipe out their investment entirely. Shares were priced at around £500, deliberately set low enough to attract ordinary fans rather than institutions. The pitch was simple and brutally honest. Wilson was talented. Formula One paid well. If he succeeded, investors would share in that success. If he failed, they would lose their money. There was no safety net. Against all expectations, the idea worked. More than 900 investors bought in. Over £1.2 million was raised. In a sport dominated by oil money and corporate conglomerates, a group of fans and private individuals collectively funded a Formula One seat. It was grassroots capitalism applied to elite motorsport. With the funding secured, Minardi signed Justin Wilson for the 2003 season. The IPO had done what no sponsor could. Justin Wilson was officially a Formula One driver. Racing with hundreds of owners. Wilson's debut came with a unique psychological weight. Every driver feels pressure to prove themselves, to justify a seat, but Wilson carried something else. He wasn't just driving for a team, he was driving for hundreds of shareholders who had invested in his future. Every lap, every finish, every contract negotiation mattered financially, not just professionally. The Minardi car was uncompetitive. That was expected, but Wilson approached the challenge with calm precision. Famously tall, he barely fit into the cockpit, requiring modifications just to drive the car safely. Yet despite the physical discomfort and technical limitations, he delivered consistent performances, kept the car clean, and maximized results. In a grid full of political maneuvering and ego, Wilson stood out for his intelligence. Engineers praised his feedback. Teams noticed his composure. Even at the back of the grid, he looked like a driver who belonged. The IPO wasn't a gimmick. It had put real talent on the track. The call-up that changed everything. Midway through the 2003 season, the impossible happened again. Jaguar Racing, a manufacturer-backed outfit struggling for results, needed a driver. They had more money, better infrastructure, and higher expectations than Minardi, and they wanted Justin Wilson. The move was extraordinary. A driver who had effectively crowdfunded his entry into Formula One was being promoted mid-season to a factory team. The risk taken by Palmer and the investors was paying off faster than anyone could have imagined. For Wilson, it was validation, not just of his talent, but of the idea that performance could still break through, even in a money-driven sport. For the investors, it was proof that their gamble wasn't reckless. The value of Wilson's career trajectory had increased overnight. Closing the company, not the dream. Wilson's time in Formula One would ultimately be brief. Jaguar's struggles continued, and the ruthless churn of the paddock eventually pushed him out. But the story didn't end there. Justin Wilson plc was later dissolved as Wilson moved on to a highly successful career in American open-wheel racing. Importantly, the investors were paid out. Not spectacularly, but fairly. The experiment worked. The crowd-funded driver repaid the crowd. That fact matters. The IPO wasn't a publicity stunt that collapsed under scrutiny. It was a functional financial mechanism that achieved its goal, placing a deserving driver on the Formula One grid without inherited wealth or corporate backing. No one else has repeated it since, not because it failed, but because it was too honest. What the F1 IPO revealed about the sport. Justin Wilson's story exposes something deeply uncomfortable about Formula One. The barriers to entry are not natural, they are constructed. The sport presents itself as the pinnacle of competition, yet requires young drivers to secure millions before they are even given the chance to prove themselves. Wilson didn't beat the system, he worked around it. By turning his career into an investment, he proved that the only missing ingredient was capital, not talent. His success embarrassed a system that prefers quiet wealth to public ingenuity. The reason no second F1 IPO followed is not because it can't work, it's because it shouldn't have to exist. The audacity of belief. Justin Wilson was not just a driver who sold shares in himself, he was a case study in belief. Belief from his manager, belief from hundreds of investors, and belief in his own ability to deliver under impossible circumstances. In a sport obsessed with pedigree and funding, Wilson found a different shortcut, not through connections or privilege, but through transparency and trust. He didn't ask people to believe in Formula One, he asked them to believe in him. And for a moment in 2003, the crowd-powered dream worked. If you want more deep stories about motorsport's forgotten pioneers, financial battles, and unlikely breakthroughs, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We're here to decode the stories Formula One doesn't advertise. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the hidden economics of Formula One and the stories that shaped the grid, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We uncover the untold histories behind motorsport's biggest moments, and the team's history forgot.